Hello and welcome to Movie Boozer Virtual Pubcast. I'm your host, Ken Ekman, and today I'm joined by Hawk Ripjaw,
Hello.
Bill Leon,
Hello.
Bill Arsena,
Hollow.
Hollow Man.
Yes, Hollow Man.
Hollow Man's awesome.
It's a fun movie. It's a crazy movie where the antagonist, I guess he becomes later, is also a rapist.
Yeah.
It's like
That was
womp womp womp.
Maybe not a great.
That's the
maybe
plot
a
of
relevant time.
the mid '90s, the Jonah Hill movie. That's the plot.
Yes, that's the plot. It stars Kevin Bacon as the Hollow Man, where he rapes someone.
And he casts real skateboarders in this film.
Yeah, it's a skateboard film too. Yeah. Hollow Man. I saw that in the theater actually, and I think I was too young for it. I was like 16 or 15 or something like that, and I just was laughing the entire time. That's the kind of movie it was.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's Paul Verhoeven, and the thing about Paul Verhoeven is sometimes it takes a viewing or two to realize whether it's a good Paul Verhoeven movie or it's a Paul Verhoeven movie that's just funny because of how bad it is.
I'm still not sure, but whatever the case is, I had a blast watching it. That's how weird it was.
Yeah.
It fucking ends with Kevin Bacon with like all these third-degree burns, and he falls to his death in an elevator shaft. He's like, ah!
All his muscles and shit.
All his
then
muscles
another
are showing. Yeah.
And then another one bites the dust plate.
Yeah. Or Footloose or something. Yeah.
Footloose.
Everybody cut loose. Footloose falling. Ah!
And like a
Kenny
freeze frame
Loggins.
on his face.
Kenny Loggins is off to the side, just like cutting a rug.
Yeah, right. The fucking
Okay, that's terrible.
Elizabeth Shue and Josh Brolin are making their way up the shaft, and
We don't dance in this town, boy.
that's the hero's line. They kick him off the shaft. We don't dance in this town, boy. The movie's about science, and suddenly it's about dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right.
So we're here to talk about other movies. We're going to go ahead and lead off with a movie that I saw, and I believe, Hawk, you didn't.
No, I saw.
Bill Arseno saw mid-90s.
Yeah, mid-90s. It's kind of funny we're talking about this film or that this film has come out in at all, because for at least on a personal level, because I have a friend of mine who whenever we talk about our childhood or growing up, he always says how I'm stuck in the 90s still. Like I dress like I'm still living in the 90s, or I like music from the 90s, which is true. I do like 90s alternative rock.
The thing about the 90s, though, is the first few, I would say at least the first 3 years of the 90s are basically an extension of the 80s culturally. And then when grunge comes in, that's its own movement.
That became something, yeah, right.
And then you had the rise of the boy band pop in the mid-90s, alongside, hip hop, of course, was starting to really get mainstream.
And then the brief period of time when nu metal, rap metal was the thing. And then
that's the late 90s. But
in the early 2000s, yeah.
And then there was the 2 weeks in 1997 when swing and ska was big, and the movie Swingers came out.
Yeah, that was weird. Yeah. That was
We
weird.
didn't really get a quintessential like musical era of films like nu metal, except for those that were just the soundtracks to like the Tomb Raider movie, right?
Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah, that one was a new.
That one, like Mission Impossible 2 had Limp Bizkit. Tomb Raider 2 had the Korn.
The Punisher soundtrack had quite a few stuff, but that was a little later.
Like Drowning Pool, yeah. And then it was the one had Papa Roach.
Yes, it did. Which fit in with a Jet Li movie like a sore thumb.
It fit in with the Jet Li movie like the plot of the one fit with the Jet Li movie.
Exactly. Although I kind of like the idea of the movie, the concept.
Oh, the one is dope. Like it's just a stupid ass movie.
It's just stupid. Yeah, right. I saw that in the theater.
But how was I mean, these were all movies that were kind of reminiscent of their time. So with mid 90s, the movie made in 2018, how was it as a 90s looking film?
Oh, it fit the era.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it definitely did. It wasn't just going for an aesthetic, which it was fulfilling. The movie's in a specific aspect ratio. What's the aspect ratio again? 4:3 or
yeah, it's 4:3.
And
Not unlike another really good movie that came out earlier this year, First Reformed.
right, and there's a lot of references in this movie. They're not necessarily overt. They're kind of in the background. They kind of bleed into the or woven into the fabric of the everyday setting of the film. Like for example, Super NES games and what do you call it?
The specific music reference.
Music specifically, yes. Not just the music that's playing on the soundtrack, but also the music that's just like in the CD collections of the characters. And then you got posters and general things like that. No one really talks about in the movie like events. It's not like you see someone talking about politics all of a sudden, like, hey, remember the LA riots?
Really, the only thing. The only thing about mid-90s that's obtrusively 90s is the fact that, the kids don't have cell phones to play with.
That's an interesting take, is that it's not necessarily what's there, it's what isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is definitely interesting, because there were a couple moments in the movie where you would think if it had been taking place now, a cell phone would have come in handy. Big time.
Yeah.
Or at the very least would have been something they would have used, like
certainly
to record a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like they would have been using Vine or something to record their skateboarding or something.
Right, but instead it deals with how there were some, especially SoCal skateboarders did all those like VHS movies that.
I helped shoot some
friends. Make stuff.
Yeah, I helped shoot some for a cousin of mine. Here in Louisiana, we did a couple little shorts here and there. It wasn't anything spectacular, but it was trying to catch on to that whole CKY thing.
Yeah.
We didn't do any other goofs. It was just skateboarding. But I really related to the character Fourth Grade. Not so much in the I guess because he was like the lone white kid. Sort of, except for Sunburn, who joined the crew. But he was like the lone white kid, but he also had acne, but he also loved making movies, but he also was like treated a little, he had a specific treatment in the group, like where they kind of just made him out to be a little bit of a fool, but they still loved him at the same time.
Yeah, they treated him as like a fool, and yet I would argue he's probably the most talented of the group, because he actually has, editing skills. That takes a lot of fucking.
Right. That's how. Yeah. That takes a lot of talent, a lot of coordination in your mind to do.
Especially considering this is the 90s. It wasn't like he could just throw it onto a computer.
Right. You had to do it deck to deck with VHS, with VCRs and the VHS tapes and analog machines where you had different. You had like 2 or 3 monitors, and we're not talking about flat screens. We're talking like tube TV monitors, and you had one little mini computer for titles, one for transitions, one for this, one for that. If you were lucky, you had a camera that had it all built in, but sometimes you had to get the second-hand or the third-hand equipment.
If you were really wealthy, you could have had some basic editing tools on your, on a PC. But this kid is not wealthy.
No, he's actually, in fact, they go out of their way to say he's like the poorest kid I know.
Yeah.
He can't even afford, tube socks. So, we haven't gotten into the plot yet, really, but this movie does do a really good job of setting up the era that they live in and making sure it is lived in beyond just references. It actually does feel like a real place, which, of course, it was. But.
So speaking of plot, this movie really doesn't have a plot per se, so much as it's sort of a fly on the wall of this kid's time period.
It's not exactly. It's not really like there's a goal that they're all going towards. or some sort of destination or anything like that. It's like what Ken said. It's very much as fly on the wall and a document sort of this period of time for this one kid. I forget his actual name, but he's given the nickname of Sunburn.
Yeah, Stevie is his actual name.
Stevie, that's right. Okay. Stevie is this little kid. I think he's like 12 or 13, maybe 14. And I believe he was in one of his previous movies was The Killing of a Sacred Deer.
I think so.
I think he played the son of Colin Farrell and Nicole Kidman. Great, really good actor. He's great in this movie. He was great in that movie. You know, he's got a lot of talent. The movie starts off with him getting beaten up by his older brother, Lucas Hedges, who I think shouldn't go without saying that he delivers a pretty good performance here too. Despite the fact that he doesn't really say a lot, he just kind of beats on his little brother. But he's very emotional.
Because they make it clear that he doesn't just beat on his brother. He kicks his brother's ass a couple times pretty violently.
He wails on him like way too hard and harshly.
Yeah. And shouts at his mother like really viciously. But they make it clear that he's hurting inside. There's something that he's feeling, which is, you know, the one thing that I think they make it clear that differentiates him and Stevie is that he was around long enough to really know their father.
Yeah.
And I think it hurt him even more, you know, his leaving than Stevie, because Stevie was too young to really get it. And so because of that, I think he's going through a lot of, you know, really
a lot of trauma. Yeah.
And he's taking it out on his brother in pretty unfortunate ways.
And he's self-medicating with orange juice.
Yes.
For some weird reason. I don't
take a drink every time you see orange juice in this.
Yeah, he loves orange juice. Well, anyway, Stevie is looking for his own crew. He's looking for his own friends to kind of hang out with, to get away from his house as much as possible. You know, he wants to get away from his single mother, his abusive brother. You know, he wants to, you know, go on adventures and stuff. So he discovers skateboarding. And on top of that, he discovers this local group of skateboarding kids. One of whom or two of whom actually are very good skateboarders in their own right. They're not just hobbyists; they're actually professionals. And the rest are kind of like, you know, just kids that kind of hang around them. And
well, not professionals, but they
want to be professionals. They could potentially become professionals,
right?
But they're very good. And so
the group of kids is made up of. So Stevie joins it, and the other kids are Ruben, Ray, fourth grade, and then fuck shit.
Yeah, fuck shit. You know that came from Jonah Hill's brain.
It had to have been.
It had to. Well, it had to have, because he wrote it, but also you could imagine it being a legit thing that he came up with. Like, yeah, I have this character called fuck shit. You know, I just can picture him saying that.
But the explanation for why he's called fuck shit makes so much sense, because
he says it all the time.
He says fuck shit. Man.
Fuck shit, that was good, man. Yeah, it's like an exclamation for him. It's like one of those, you know, kind of fun words, you know. And so he ends up making his way into the crew and becomes one of their friends. There's some dynamics going on within the crew. Like Ruben, who used to be the youngest one of the bunch, is now the second youngest of the bunch, and he feels out of place because of Stevie's. And then you got fuck shit having a relationship with Ray, where Ray is kind of the more responsible one, the fatherly figure of the group, and he wants fuck shit to not be smoking so much or drinking so much. He wants him to get with it, you know, become more responsible. There's a lot of complexity here to this group, despite the fact that they're not terribly articulate. You know, they cuss a lot. They say a lot of swear words, and usually they repeat the swear words over and over again.
They do a lot of rebellious stuff.
They do rebellious stuff. They, of course, skateboard in places they shouldn't be skateboarding, but that's part of the culture. They smoke a lot. They drink a lot. They do all sorts of stuff, you know, and they drive while drinking sometimes, and things like that. And Stevie's just having fun. Like, this is the first time I've been in a car, without an adult. And Ruben's like, dude, keep that shit to yourself. Don't just say that.
Yeah,
that's embarrassing. And Stevie's like, just smiling, like, I'm with the group.
I think a perfect example from the movie of how it explores the way, the way groups of kids interact is you have Ruben, who tries to teach Stevie the ropes. One of the things he says is, like, Stevie Stevie thanks him for something.
He says thank you, yeah.
And Ruben's like, don't do that. Don't say thank you. People think you're gay. Well, actually, he says the other word, but I don't
people think you're an F word, and so he's like, oh, okay, sorry. Well, don't say sorry either.
Yeah, exactly.
And then later, fuck, shit, and Ray are like, no, you can say that. That's just proper manners.
Right.
It's what Ruben thinks he's supposed to be doing. And the other guys are like, no, it's okay. You can say thank you. It's fine.
And it deals with the inner group politics of the I would say middle to high school age cliques, where you have your group of friends and you're not really friends because they're people that you want to hang out with all the time. You're friends because you like to belong to something, and you like a few people in the group, but you're kind of stuck with the rest of them.
Yeah, it's kind of like family in a way, in a weird, strange little way. It's kind of like that.
Just like The Last Jedi.
It's a movie about family. Well, I want to get back to the point about the kids not being very articulate. This isn't to say they're dumb. It's to say that they're they're kids. They're products.
13 in this movie?
Yeah, something like that. I think one of them might be 15 or 16, maybe 17 even. But that the youngest is like 13 or 12.
Ray is coming close to graduation, I think.
Yeah, so they're basically like middle school, like lower end middle school to higher end high school age. And they're not stupid kids. They're not ignorant kids necessarily. It's more ignorance based off of youth, not ignorance based off of lack of education. They haven't.
And the main reason, it's worth noting, the main reason the group is so diverse age-wise is simply because, the skateboarding thing. It's such a niche group that there's only a handful of kids who are as into it as they are. So, and
they're really into it. Like they take to it big time. And Stevie, picks it up. He at first he was just kind of fascinated by it, and then he wasn't so good at it at first. But then he starts getting better, and improving in his skills. A lot of critics had problems with the use of the F word. Now, I don't mean F-U-C-K. I mean, F-A, so on. So it's a bad word, basically. And
that's just the 90s. People
that's
said
just
it all
the 90s. I remember it specifically. It was kind of like, it was almost like it was like a forbidden word that you said, but it wasn't like you tried justifying it by saying, "Oh, I don't mean it by gay people. I mean it just by stupid people."
And the same thing. Same thing for the
R word, even
exactly.
Or something like that.
Have any of you guys seen the Louis C.K. bit about the word and how he's like?
I kind of stopped watching Louis C.K. after.
This happened. He did this bit before.
I know the routine you're talking about, where he's kind of trying to take it back and say that it's not.
He tries to equate it to asshole, basically. and well, that's the thing, though. That's what I mean. Is like little kids in the 90s. When we said that word, it wasn't a homophobic thing. It was like. Yeah, it was another word for you're a prick.
I think the problem is it's not the word itself that's the problem. It's the fact that the word is commonly associated with a certain group, and
I get that.
Yeah,
I completely get that.
But that's what the kids don't understand, and then that kind of goes into their maturity or lack of maturity. And the fact that
I just pointed that out, though. Like in the 90s, kids didn't equate it to that. It was just a word that they were familiar with.
Right, and it was a word that they knew that adults or some adults didn't like, and it was something they could use in their own circles, and it kind of make them sound cool. It wasn't so much always hateful, Sometimes kids would say it in reference to someone they thought was effeminate or gay or like legitimately gay or something, but it was never all like universal that way. It was sometimes kind of a mixed thing, but that doesn't make it right, of course. But a lot of critics took issue with that. I felt like Jonah Hill kind of nailed it in terms of that being the dialogue for kids of that era.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, he in a podcast interview on The Ringer was like, look, that's just how a lot of kids in that time talked, and it's horrible that they said those things. We probably said those things, and it was messed up that we did. Mm-hmm. But you're kids. You don't understand the impact of what you're doing. You don't understand that there's a whole bigger world out there that don't appreciate it.
And it would be disingenuous to make a movie that's supposed to be, a realistic portrayal of kids in the mid-'90s without using the dialect that they would use.
Right. Nowadays, I would say more so than back in the 90s. Now, a lot of kids are more aware, not just self-aware, but also aware of their surroundings and people around them. And they're not necessarily walking on eggshells, but the good ones are paying attention.
Mm-hmm. A little bit more. I kind of have an interesting question that I think
okay.
More so than Ken, I think Bill Arsenault might be a little bit more dialed into. The film Kids by Larry Clark.
Yeah.
Harmony Korine.
Written by Harmony, yeah.
When that came out, that was kind of lauded as like, this is what the kids of the 90s are really like. So how does this compare to that? And I know that movie, I'm just talking about in terms of the portrayal of.
Yeah.
I would say necessarily. Kids is more of an exploitation film.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
I would agree with that. But I would also say Kids is much more, not seedy, but I would say, well, maybe seedy.
The movie ends with a kid raping a girl,
right,
knowing that he's getting AIDS by doing
it. Yeah. That's I don't even that scene,
I mean seedy by way of something less sinister. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Bill.
That end scene of Kids makes my skin crawl. That like Ken describing it right there just made my I feel disgusting. Yeah. I feel disgusting.
And the fact that it's being made by an adult is also disgusting.
It's a movie that makes you feel dirty watching.
Yes.
Yeah, and even more so that Larry Clark, that's like his only genre that he works in is kids doing fucked up things. Yeah, he doesn't do anything. I've never seen him do any other movie outside of that. And he's still doing that. He just released a movie called Marfa Girl 2, which is a sequel to an independent film that he did a couple of years ago. So no one gives a fuck about him anymore, but unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. But as far as this movie's depiction of that era of the youth in relation to kids or to Larry Clark style, I would say it's less hardcore, but probably just as fly on the wall realistic. If that makes any sense?
Yeah. I mean, there are scenes in Kids where it doesn't come off as evil. You know what I mean? It's not malevolent. Right. And there are scenes in dialogue in that movie where you do feel like, okay, these are just kids. But
I would say the movie Kids is it's accurate if you're looking for the worst example of kids from that time period.
Yeah.
Mid-'90s is more representative.
Yes. Okay. That's and plus it's a different city too. If that makes any sense. Like one's LA, one's New York, And the closest scene in this movie, I think there were two scenes in this movie that I could maybe compare to Kids. One involves Stevie's first sexual experience.
Oh yeah.
But it's very tame. However, it's also a little intense at the same time. It's intense.
And it's definitely a little fucked up because it is an older teenage girl who is having sex with this kid who is what is he 12 or 13?
I think he's 13, but it still doesn't matter. It's still, but basically
that happens in hentai all the time.
I know, but but the scene doesn't show nudity. I think she shows a little underwear, but that's about it. They do kiss, but other than that, they don't really do anything. They don't show anything else. He does describe it later. The what?
Do they go on the Kiss cruise?
Oh no, they don't go on that. That's a whole movie by itself. Yeah, could you imagine that shit? Talk about seedy. But no,
seedy would be the Juggalo cruise.
Oh god,
oh, no,
just
the gathering, that. The gathering.
Yeah, just imagine being an employee on that boat. Like, I gotta deal with this shit, you know. I gotta make these fucking food items for these assholes, you know. No, that scene, it doesn't show really anything. They don't show any acts or anything like that other than kissing, but it does show Stevie being very awkward and shaking and being very nervous and timid, you know, about the whole thing, and rightfully so. He's way too young for this experience, and she's whispering, "Don't be nervous. It's okay," you know. So it's a little like, it's tender, but at the same time, it's also very like, this shouldn't be happening right now.
Right. It is essentially statutory rape.
It is essentially statutory rape.
How old is she?
I think she's like supposed to be 16 or 17.
Right. So it's not legally that, but it's not right, is what I'm saying.
She shouldn't be doing that. Now,
an entire generation embraced Eddie K. Thomas fucking Stifler's mom. So
yeah, well, that it's weird how movies and culture work together, man. I mean,
well, yeah,
it's like fucking Revenge of the Nerds features a literal rape in it, and it's celebrated.
We'll kind of brace over that a little bit when we talk about Bohemian Rhapsody and Bryan Singer's involvement.
Oh God, yeah, we're gonna have to have a big conversation on that, I guess. But no, that scene really kind of got to me a little bit in the sense that you could almost feel Stevie's nervousness and anxiety about his experience here, you know, because A, we in the audience are like, okay, this shouldn't be happening, and B, are almost with Stevie, like, dude, this is way too much, you know, like too much of everything all at once. And the movie kind of has this escalation to it before the climax, and then the climax happens, and it's like this boiling pot of emotions and inner group politics and dynamics that eventually boils over into everyone being bummed out, as they say in the film. Yeah. In the film, they say, "Dude, everyone's bummed out. Let's just go home." Yeah. That's just how this goes into their articulation issues. They're not really well versed, but they're well versed in their dialect.
How many? You know what I mean? How many beers would you guys give this movie?
I'd give it 2.
Yeah,
2 beers.
I think 2 or 3 for me. Just
possibly 3, yeah, but I would say 2. I would say 2.
The movie is a little bit segmented, and I would argue Jonah Hill, his directing in the film is solid overall, but I think there should have been a little bit more of a tighter narrative to tie the segments of
this together. This is his directorial debut.
Yeah, and it's actually a good directorial.
That's what. Well, that's okay. So I mean that sounds typical for a first-time actor turned filmmaker. So
it's definitely forgivable from that respect. I'm just not, you know, it. It's gonna get another beer anyway.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
But it's a good movie. It's still a decent movie, and you know, it may not be the best possible one that could come out of, you know, a director's first try, but it's a very good effort, and it still works. You know, I think I agree with Ken. A little bit more narrative strength would have helped.
But overall, it's worth seeing.
Definitely.
I want to
see. If you see it in the theater, honestly, it's got.
It's interesting because of the aspect ratio. Like, the screen is there. It makes the screen bigger because of it, you know, because it's just a square box in the middle of the screen.
It's 4:3.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Everyone saw the world in 4:3 through television, and that.
Right. So. That makes sense. But I've seen the advertisements for this on YouTube, and it really kind of. Have you guys seen any of these YouTube ads for mid-90s?
I saw a few.
I stay away from those.
it makes it seem real fluffy, and Jonah Hill seems real confident, like, I'm a filmmaker, I cast skaters instead of actors.
This movie is not fluffy.
It seems well, no, I know that. I'm just saying, like, the whole marketing push for this seems a little up its ass, but I'm glad to hear that the movie is not that
Anytime you have a famous actor who decides he's going to direct, that Hollywood tends to publicize that a lot more.
Yeah.
So,
the marketing push for this has just seemed a little pretentious, but
it's not fluffy in terms of what it depicts, but it is maybe fluffy in terms of how Stevie sees the world at first. He's this world of skateboarding. He's very wide-eyed and excited about it. So, but that's just one aspect.
So
it's not the whole movie.
2 to 3 beers for mid-90s.
We'll go ahead and move on now to a movie that I saw and no one else did, and I recommend that no one else does.
Is this the Nutcracker?
The Nutcracker and the Four Realms.
The way you said Nutcracker, is this the Nutcracker? And I was drinking some water.
It's the Nut Shack.
And I was drinking some water. I did a literal spit take when he said that. I was like,
it was not my intention.
I'll go ahead and jump out on Front Street that this movie is getting 5 beers. Only reason it doesn't get 6 beers is I almost think it would be disingenuous to give the movie enough credit.
To be
that's
like so bad it's good.
Yeah, to me, 6 beers is almost it almost has to be a movie that is so bad that it's almost worth getting drunk to watch, and I cannot say that about this movie.
Right.
I saw one thing in the trailer that intrigued me, and I asked you to see if it was worth my time, where apparently there's a giant robot that looks like Helen Mirren in the trailer.
Not really.
Let me do a quick recap for any audience members that might not be familiar. Ken has a specific relationship with Nutcracker movies.
Yeah, the Nutcracker franchise.
I had the fortune to watch the last $100 million budgeted Nutcracker movie, The Nutcracker in 3D, in theaters, and that's not a small feat, because that is not a movie that was watched by many people.
I didn't see it in theaters, but I've watched it several times on.
You bought it. You bought the DVD in like our first episode.
I have the Blu-ray.
That's right. I worked at a video rental store and I purchased the movie, and it was more expensive than other DVDs.
Yeah,
it's like I had to import it.
I actually have 2 copies of the Blu-ray.
Actually, I'm pretty sure I had to special order it.
So
almost 100% sure that I heard about it. Like, is what?
I said that's just insane. That
like well at this video store, like if a customer because we'd sell movies too, and if a customer wanted something, we could put it on order and it would get sent in. Usually,
that's like Randall in Clerks, like Hermaphrodites 2, Up Your Ass 86. Oh, what was the title, ma'am, that you're looking for?
Scrappy Happy Hero Pup.
Yes. So the
Nutcracker 3D, please.
Just to put this in perspective, the movie. I said 100. It actually had a $90 million budget. Whatever. That's still big.
It's still pretty big.
Yeah. And the movie had a domestic gross of 195,459.
Oh my God!
Wait.
Now it did overseas. It made 15 million and change.
Wait, which Nutcracker? 3D or
the one we watched? 3D. Yeah, the John Lithgow one.
Okay.
John Lithgow? No, Nathan Lane.
Nathan Lane, yes.
John Lithgow is
Turturro.
Like John Turturro. Who the fuck? Why did I say John Lithgow?
If John Lithgow was in it, it would have been better.
It would have been an improvement, yes.
Yeah, John Turturro plays Andy Warhol / the Rat King.
slash Hitler.
Yeah, that's slash correct. Hitler, which is
slash Ernst Alvo Blofeld.
Yeah.
Slash Gallagher.
I mean, he has a shark in a tank that he kills. He has snaps his fingers. There's a jazzy rap band just appears, and
that's the thing. The Nutcracker in 3D is not a good movie, but what it is a fucking amazing experience. Just
it's something.
So this new one is by who? What studio put this out?
Disney.
Disney
put this out. It's like a D tier Disney release, right?
Only a $133 million budget. So by the way, the budget of this movie is only about $40 million more than the Nutcracker in 3D. And yet it's so much worse. because it's just dull as shit.
There's an interesting piece of trivia about this era of Disney films is that after The Princess and the Frog, they were going to do a 2D animated Disney film every 2 to 3 years. And then Alice in Wonderland, Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland made $1 billion during the 3D craze.
It is still one of like the top 20 grossing films of all time, if I'm not mistaken.
And then Disney said, fuck 2D, that's not where the money is anymore.
Yep.
And also fuck nostalgia. So
they did release Winnie the Pooh in 2011. And I just saw Christopher Robin the other day. I really liked it, by the way.
Yeah, Christopher Robin. I said it was a good movie.
Those things are good, but like neither one of those were designed to be moneymakers, and even Winnie the Pooh 2011 was made on an extremely modest budget.
Right.
So let me go ahead and get into the plot of Nutcracker and the Four Realms. This won't take long.
And a Nutcracker.
There are 4 lights.
Will said there was only 2 realms shown in the movie.
What?
Yes.
They're saving the other 2 for the sequel.
It's like the fucking Airbender movie.
They do briefly showcase all 4, but they only spend time in 2 of them.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, the plot of this movie, it starts off like your typical Nutcracker. You have Clara and her family celebrating Christmas, getting ready to go to the Godfathers for Christmas. And what this movie does to try to bring in some extra drama is the mother has passed away shortly before the events of this film. And so you have the family is sort of in turmoil as they're experiencing their first Christmas since the mother died. This is the only effective dramatic element in the film because, and almost exclusively because of the performance of the guy who plays the father. He's an actor. You know what? I'm pulling it up right here because I want to make sure that I get it right.
Morgan Freeman?
No, I think that's the Godfather, right? Or
Give
the
me
grandfather or something. I don't know. I assume that's what.
Okay, Matthew McFadden.
Oh, really?
Yes, is the actor who plays Clara's father. And I know you're laughing at this, but he actually gives a genuinely emotional performance in a really fascinating way. Because this version of the Nutcracker is set in Victorian London. And he embodies in his performance the like stiff upper lip British sentiment where he's trying so hard to hold back his emotions in front of his kids, and his kids are constantly, because they're kids, reminding him of his wife, who's no more, and it's these brief moments at the beginning and end of the film are way more deserving of praise than the entire rest of this movie. I have to give Matthew McFadden some credit because it's a damn good performance in a movie that otherwise is not.
This movie has like a weird number of really prestigious actors, doesn't it?
It does, and oddly enough, Matthew McFadden he overshadows the prestigious, big name.
Well, it's because Helen Mirren is buried under a pound of makeup.
Oh, for fuck's sake! Yeah, she gets the Johnny Depp treatment in this. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they asked Johnny Depp to play Mother Ginger, and he turned it down.
And he turned it down by throwing a bottle of whiskey at them.
Or like he already filmed like half of his scenes, and then he quit because he was in trouble with his wife and or his ex-wife, and
like Lasse Hallström did.
Fuck, Disney was like, all right, well, we already did this with Solo. We're not going to reshoot half the fucking movie.
There's a very interesting thing in that 2 films we're going to be talking about today had a director change midway through. And in this case, Disney was able to get both a director credit for both Lasse Hallström and Joe Johnston. Even though Joe Johnston apparently only really took over for reshoots and then some editing. And
Joe Johnston? You mean... Captain America: First Avenger?
Yes.
Yeah, and the Wolfman.
Okay. And the Wolfman?
Yeah.
The Rocketeer, yeah.
Now, the visuals of this film are definitely Lasse Hallström visuals. Very, very storybook-like, and I call it Terry Gilliam light because it's Terry Gilliam minus, meaning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you've seen Chocolat, you know what I'm talking about. Fuck that movie.
Oh, yeah. I forgot that he did that.
Wait, Terry Gilliam made that, or
No,
Leslie
Hallstrom made that.
Okay.
Lesser Hallstrom.
The Lesser Hailstream?
Hailstrom.
The last of hamstring.
Yes.
The last of the hamstrings? What?
So basically what happens is, it starts off with the typical Nutcracker setup, and then suddenly just Morgan Freeman, he's apparently their godfather. And he basically says, he tells this girl, Claire, that she's special, and he gives her present, which is like she has to follow this string, and she follows the string all the way down this hallway that leads her out of this like very rabbit hole-ish Alice in Wonderland thing, where she appears out of the trunk of a tree in the Four Realms. And it turns out that she's the chosen one because her mother started this whole realm thing by turning toys into real people and then creating this world or something.
What?
This is your chosen one narrative to the.
Not just that. I mean, the mother creating a whole universe.
Yeah, I guess her mother was supposed to be a technical wizard and found a way to turn toys to life. And
so her mother is God for these people,
basically, but she's now a dead god. So
yeah, so that makes it even. That's an interesting. They could have taken that and gone with it, but I guess they just glossed over it.
So then she shows up, and the Nutcracker, by the way, in this is not even a Nutcracker. It's just a dude, because they.
It's just a guy.
The actor Jaden, I think it's pronounced Ferrora Knight, plays Captain Philip Hoffman / the Nutcracker. The only reason you even know that his character is supposed to be a Nutcracker is the first line of dialogue that
she says, "Bite my cock."
Clara says to him is, "You're a Nutcracker soldier." Yes, she says that, and you're like, "No, he's not a Nutcracker. He's a human being. What the fuck?"
And she's like, "That really cracked my nuts."
I'm a person, and my name is Anakin.
Oh,
yeah, I know, right?
Are you an angel?
Are you an angel? I've heard of them. The drunkards over in the bar over there talk about him a lot.
I fucking hate sand.
Yeah,
I hate sand. It's rough. It gets everywhere.
It's coarse.
So the Nutcracker is barely in this film. He just follows her.
It's not like female skin.
The Nutcracker is love interest, and then basically she gets into the Four Realms and finds out that one of the realms is rebelling, and it's Mother Ginger, played by Helen Mirren, who's supposedly the head of the Land of Amusements realm.
And you want to be my David Bowie actor?
Yeah, she's a ginger. That's why.
I thought she had white hair.
No, it's.
I know her face is like
red.
Really white, silvery white.
Yeah, it's got pancake.
Right, she's a ginger. That's basically why.
Right.
So anyway, the Land of Amusements is basically.
Did Hawk just ask who wrote this?
Yeah, who wrote this fucking movie?
Okay. So
keep talking. I'm gonna look it up.
It's written by Ashley Powell with rewrites by Tom McCarthy.
What?
The fucking cobbler, Tom McCarthy?
Yes.
Well, I think people say Spotlight Tom McCarthy, but okay.
Spotlight. Was that
that's what's weird about Tom McCarthy.
Yeah, that was him, Spotlight.
He is both Spotlight Tom McCarthy and the cobbler Tom McCarthy.
Well, yes. Win-win in the Station Agent. But
yeah, Station Agent.
Station Agent was very good, yes.
But he also made the cobbler and wrote the Nutcracker.
Yes. he did rewrites. Let's be fair. He did
Nutcracker in the Four Realms.
For all I know, his rewrites were the beginning and end of the movie that I actually kind of thought worked to an extent. But no, unfortunately, that only makes up about 10 minutes total. So that's no big deal. Point being, I'm just going to go ahead and spoil this because who gives a fuck? Yeah. So Keira Knightley plays the Sugar Plum Fairy, who's the head of the Land of Sweets realm, and she's the actual bad guy. And Keira Knightley's performance in this, like, she goes full
cutesy.
It is
Helena Bonham Carter.
No, this is a Michael Sheen level. I don't give a fuck performance.
I'm seeing this movie.
She just completely pushes the envelope as far her character is the definition of like sugar high, Victorian age sugar high woman.
Billy.
and by the end,
I was
like mustache twirling villain for some reason. There is absolutely, I mean, first of all, it's telegraphed from the beginning. There is so much foreshadowing that you almost want to hit your head against the wall that no one's figured out that she's the evil one.
Is she the Rat King?
No, the Rat King doesn't exist in this. There's a mouse who is
the
apparently...
Rat King is saved for the sequels.
There's a mouse who is a rat.
Yeah, the Mouse King is in this. For Disney purposes,
stupid.
it's they got rid of the rats.
Mouse rat.
But what they do is they have the mice turn into like this giant rat by like clustering together because that's something that happens.
That's horrifying.
So Ken, if you had like,
so apparently Lil Buck plays the Mouse King in like, I don't know who Lil Buck is, but it's a funny name.
You said his name with such confidence, Lil Buck, and then I don't know who that is.
All I know is he's a dancer and model who Spike Jonze has worked with. Apparently,
I thought you were going to say Little John or something.
Charles Lil Buck Riley apparently did a motion capture performance, so whatever.
Oh, okay.
Either
Ken,
way,
if you had, even foreshadowed a couple of these things to me when I asked you a week ago if I should see this, you would have somebody else to talk about this with.
Here's the thing: is I know that you're appreciating the fact that she does a full Michael Sheen in this.
I'm salivating at the fact she does a full Michael Sheen.
But, okay. Well, go ahead and see it, but you've been warned. That's all I'm going to say.
I won't see it because I don't care anymore. But
yeah, Richard E. Grant is in the movie, and he basically plays Bob Hope as Jack Frost in that awful special from the 90s.
Which Jack Frost?
Nobody knows what you're talking about but me.
Oh yeah, well, this is a very obscure reference because I only know of it because I happen to be a follower of Gilbert Gottfried's podcast. So in the 90s, the last Christmas special that Bob Hope did not too long before his death, he played Jack Frost, and it is the most depressing, dementia level thing you've ever seen.
He looks tired. He looks drunk. He looks like he just wants to get off set and get out of these clothes.
His eyes are like red as hell.
I thought you were talking about the Michael Keaton movie, and I was like,
no.
Hope was in that?
We should do like a commentary on that Jack Frost Michael Keaton movie. But anyway,
Richard E. Grant, they make him up to look like seriously. I actually put this in the group chat. If you look at the side by side, it is the exact same makeup job.
Right.
So anyway, with that said, and Eugenio Derbez is in this, and he's the ruler of the Land of Flowers, and he has 2 lines in the movie. So anyway,
I'm the ruler of the Land of Flowers. Where's my paycheck?
That's basically it. Except he says it like the Land of Flowers. He literally says it like that.
Eugenio Derbez. Why do they keep using that guy? I don't like him.
He's big amongst people that speak Spanish, and I know that
he's big in Mexico. I know that, but
he's actually a decent actor when he's in a movie that doesn't blow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Problem is, he's in a lot of movies that blow. All right. The only other thing that's sort of creative is they have a couple Fantasia references in this. Like, there's a couple scenes where you see the orchestra in Shadows, which was kind of sort of creative, but it services a movie that sucks. So let's talk Bohemian Rhapsody.
Why not?
Yeah, just move on. Fucking crap.
Another movie that took 2 directors to make because one dropped out. The only difference is in this case, for some reason, they decided to credit the first one.
I noticed that in the opening credits. Yeah. I was actually surprised to see that in the opening credits because I had heard of, he got kicked off and they brought.
Yeah, there's 2 theories. Some say that he was kicked out of it. Others say that he just stopped showing up to set.
I don't think he stopped showing up to set.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. There's a lot of rumors out there that prior to this, like apparently Rami Malek was really not a fan of him, and they were clashing a lot, and so some people say that there might have been like a rebellion against him.
Bryan Singer seemed like an odd choice to direct it anyway.
I think. Well, here's the thing. Bryan Singer is one of the more prominent openly gay directors in Hollywood, and I would not be surprised if the producers behind this film simply said, well, he's gay, let's have him be the director of this.
Which is kind of a totally fundamental misunderstanding of everything that should make a movie about Freddie Mercury work.
Now, now it's unfortunate that Bryan Singer is the director. Because of obviously there's all that controversy of what's happened, and even more so because I think this movie is it has a whole bunch of talented people in it, and there's a lot to recommend about the film, I think. And I would say that it's unfair to hold the entire film against to hold yourself against the film just because one asshole happens to have his name on the credits.
It's so I know you're saying that because I'm the asshole I'm the guy that wanted to not watch the movie because one asshole, but it's not just that. I've been following this movie since Sacha Baron Cohen was going to be Freddie Mercury, and it was going to be a very wild R-rated movie about Freddie Mercury himself as a member of Queen and his lifestyle and his struggles all the way up to his death.
Right.
And Queen the band said, no, we want a movie about Queen the band and how we move on from the death of Freddie Mercury because we're
this certainly isn't that at all.
Which is, I'm glad it's not that, and I know I've heard that it's not that, but that, and then Cohen was like, okay, I'm out in that case. And the reason that I don't have any interest in this movie, besides the fact that I really love Rami Malek, is that it's not what I had wanted it to be in the first place, and that vision of that movie is gone, and I don't really have any interest in the alternative.
This is the only chance we're going to get to see Rami Malek play Freddie Mercury, and honestly, it's worth it. That's what I have to say about the film.
I mean, I love Rami Malek. Like, Night at the Museum was the first time I had a moderate sexual attraction to a reanimated pharaoh, but I got to draw the line somewhere.
Oh,
well, that's a lot.
It figures my internet went out like just as we started talking about this. What did I miss?
I was just saying that I think it's unfortunate that Bryan Singer, that his name happens to be on this movie, because I think
I didn't even think about it going in, and even seeing his name as the listed director, like, it didn't bother me.
Well, I'm not holding it against the movie. What I'm saying is that it's unfortunate because that has put a stank on the movie that will not be easily erased.
Did you say stink or stank?
He said stank.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I thought you said the weirder word.
There ain't no stink around here. This is a stank.
So his name is Rami Malek?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he did a good job. He clearly committed to his role.
To the point where I completely bought him as Freddie Mercury. It only took me a few scenes for me to just forget that it was an actor playing it.
Oh, he looks like Freddie Mercury, like uncannily. It's crazy.
That I wouldn't even say he looks exactly like Freddie Mercury. I think that his performance made the few differences not matter after.
That's what I mean. Is like he really exemplifies the guy's mannerisms and physical performance.
He had a good supporting cast too. I do want to point out something I noticed when going over the cast of this on Wikipedia is that there are two people from Sing Street in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Aidan Gillen.
Yeah, Aidan Gillen plays their manager, and I don't remember the actress's name, but Freddie Mercury's girlfriend played the main girl in Sing Street.
Yeah, Lucy Boynton, I think is her name.
Oh, is she in this?
Yeah. She is Freddie Mercury's. Wikipedia lists her as his girlfriend, but and I don't even. Does this count as spoilers? Talking about the life of a famous rock star.
Yeah, no, they were actually married for a period of time, weren't they?
Is that not? That's not portrayed in the film. They never
Actually,
married.
Well, he proposes to her. They don't actually show the wedding, but I'm pretty sure they were married for.
In the
one
film,
of the biggest
in the
one
movie,
of the biggest misunderstandings of Freddie Mercury is that people think he was gay. He was actually married to his wife and had side stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah, that's
he was
portrayed.
bisexual.
That's portrayed in the film. In the movie, he proposes to this girl, and she accepts, and then he admits to her later that he's bisexual after he has this affair with this mustache man. I don't remember what his job was, but
What?
there's a mustache man, and Freddie Mercury makes out with him.
It wasn't just that you said mustache man. I don't remember what his job was.
He was there in the studio with them. I don't know.
You mean literal?
He was a roadie,
job.
wasn't he?
I thought you meant like
I'm pretty sure roadie or something.
I don't know what his job was, but he was there.
I'm not sure what his occupation was. But,
you know what? His job was to offer mustache rides.
There you go.
Oh, no.
So
I'm gonna hide in the studio and fuck Freddie Mercury. That's what I'm gonna do.
After that happens, he goes to his fiance and tells her that he's bisexual, and she takes when he gives her the ring, she's like he says to her, "Don't take the ring off, don't take the ring off." And then after he admits to this, she takes the ring off, and he makes this big deal out of it. And so they never show them get married in the movie.
No. I'm pretty sure he was actually married, though.
I believe you. I'm just saying the movie doesn't portray that aspect of it. There was a lot. I mean, I'll be honest. I went into this knowing a lot about the music of Queen and not knowing a lot about the people that made it.
Mm-hmm. And I think the movie does a decent job, especially it being PG-13. I think it did a decent job showing his excesses. Mm-hmm. Even though it's not a hard R movie, which it could easily have gone there.
It didn't need to be. Oh, yeah, okay.
There's even a sequence in the movie that I would say is right out of Cruising.
Oh no!
Where he's going into one of those clubs.
Oh.
Yeah, and they managed to do a PG-13 version of that of one of the many scenes in Cruising.
Well, you know what? Actually, it's interesting you bring that up because that and the house party scene reminded me of Party Monster. I had joked to to the person I was with. I was like, Freddie Mercury is the original Michael Alec.
Wow.
Because there's this scene where he's throwing this house party and he has this like elaborate looking Michael Jackson coat on, and he addresses all the people at the party. He's like, "My darlings," and it's like straight out of Party Monster a little bit.
So I have a question about that scene. I don't remember who the reviewer was. But it was on RogerEbert.com, and the reviewer gave the movie 1 star out of 4. And they called out one scene that they specifically cited as, quote, unforgivable, in where, Freddie Mercury is throwing his drag party and he tries to bring his bandmates into the party. They're sitting around looking uncomfortable and they say, oh, that's not really our scene. And the reason this reviewer found this scene so abhorrent is that the movie frames it as we are the band and we're supposed to feel uncomfortable in this party. Like, we're supposed to feel that Freddie is doing something that is objectively dirty that we should feel bad about.
That's not what I got out of it.
Yeah, I would say, I'm going to say that I think that's that person's opinions being projected onto the movie. It didn't come off that way to me at all.
How it came off to me is, your typical band kind of on the rocks situation where, all of them had their own lives they were leading, and they came to his party because, yes, they're in, they're
his band.
And they're like, yeah, we came here, but the problem is...
Wait, I do want to ask you, Hawk, does the critic that wrote this piece mention the fact that all of those band members mention that they have wives and kids that they need to get home to?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think so.
Because at this point in the story, it's like 1980, 1981. They've been around for a while.
A decade. Yeah.
That's all. I think one of them literally says, like, I have a wife and kid I got to get home to.
Yes.
No, I think the reviewer just cited the one line of dialogue. This is just not our scene, Freddie.
Mm.
That is a line that happens, but
but I think he was reading too much into it.
I think this guy's projecting onto the movie.
I was just curious if that, because that seemed weird, especially as a movie directed by Bryan Singer, that he would make that kind of uncomfortable moment in the movie.
Wow, was it directed by Bryan Singer?
Good
No, I don't
portion of
know.
it was
I don't
directed
know.
by
By
Dexter
Bryan Singer.
Fletcher.
I don't really care. I will say I'm glad that the version of this movie that Sacha Baron Cohen described, where the first half would be about Freddie Mercury and then he dies in the middle, and then the second half is about the other guys carrying on. I'm glad that that is not the final product here.
Yeah, that would be sick.
That would be so fucking well. That's why Sacha Baron Cohen walked from the project.
Yeah. Now the movie actually, what's ironic if that story is true, by the way. What's ironic is this version of the story kind of leaves the rest of the band members to the side. You really don't get too much character development from any of them,
Yes,
which is
true.
Yeah, which is a little unfortunate. If you're gonna focus on one person, they did spend enough time with them that you at least get an idea of who they were. If you're calling the movie a Queen biopic, I think that this wouldn't be as effective, but it's really a Freddie Mercury biopic.
Which is what again, I guess the only validity to that story is Sacha Baron Cohen, but
yeah,
I have no reason to not believe him.
Oh, I'm not even saying I doubt him, but
Mm-hmm.
the version of the film we have here clearly did not have direct, as
Right.
direct control by, say, Roger Taylor or Brian May, because frankly, if they had, if they had their egos into this film, then they would be in a lot more of the movie than they are.
yeah, that's true.
And another thing I will say about the movie that I think is this movie at its strongest, any sequence with Freddie Mercury performing, some of the best lip syncing I think I've ever seen in a movie, because at times I could swear that it was Rami Malek singing.
I had to Google it. Yeah, I had to Google it.
But they only
is it not?
Yeah, they only use Freddie Mercury's music and voice. And
it says on Wikipedia that he did some of the singing, but yeah, it was a combination of actual Freddie Mercury recordings and some Canadian guy that won like a contest to impersonate Freddie Mercury.
Yeah, well, either way, it just plain works.
It works. Yeah, those scenes are the best stuff in the movie. Much like how in the Oliver Stone's Doors movie, the best stuff is just when they're performing as the Doors.
And what's great, though, is the entire climax of this movie is a nearly shot-for-shot remake of the
Live Aid.
Queen's performance on Live Aid. And I think I've seen that performance in its full, and it is amazing how perfectly they get it, and how they the extra bits they add into it for a dramatic perspective just push the power of Freddie Mercury and Queen to the nth degree. I genuinely dug the way this movie ends.
Well, are we done talking about the good stuff? Because that's a good.
Yeah, let's get into some of the less.
That's a good. Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing: is I think that's a great segue into the bad stuff, which is
Bill's like,
No. Everything he said is correct, and there's a lot to like about this movie. However, I remember like about 5 minutes before it actually sort of ends, I said to myself, I was like, okay, they're doing Live Aid. The movie opens with them about to take the stage of Live Aid, which is such a walk hard move. Like it's in terms of structuring your biopic, like that is such a fucking parody way to go about it. So I had predicted, I was like, okay, they're going to play they're going to do Live Aid. I guess I predicted like 2 songs. They ended up doing like 3 or 4. And then they play the final song, freeze frame, fade to black, still photos and text explaining, Freddie Mercury died of AIDS in 1991, and all this is where Roger Taylor is now, and blah 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 blah. I was like, oh my god, this is so fucking paint by the numbers biopic.
I will agree with that. Yeah,
I hated the structure of the script to this, because it is just like there was no enthusiasm about it. It was just like, we're gonna make a fucking biopic movie.
This movie does tread the biopic standards very closely.
Yeah.
The only reason I give this movie more credit than a movie like, say, Walk Tall or whatever, and
Walk Hard. I almost said Walk Hard. Walk the Line.
Walk the Line. Whatever the fuck it is.
Okay, look, Walk Hard is the quintessential musical biopic.
There are times, I promise you, if you watch this movie, Bohemian Rhapsody, there were times where you will think of Walk Hard because it just follows that satire. Like,
I have heard multiple people reference Walk Hard in talking about Bohemian Rhapsody.
Well, that's the thing. It's every music biopic that follows.
Yes,
Ray does the same thing.
Ray
Falls of Fire from like 30 years ago does the same thing.
Yeah,
well, because Walk Hard is such.
Bamba does the same thing.
Walk
The
Hard
Doors,
is such a great
I mentioned The
musical
Doors.
parody that it actively challenges every following musical biopic to change the mold because Walk Hard exposed the entire formula.
I think the only musical biopic that I think truly has an original structure to it is 24-Hour Party People. If you've never seen it, it's Steve Coogan plays the producer of...
That's not about a band, though. That's a little different.
It is about a band. The focus of the movie is about how Steve Coogan's character put together the group New Order.
Oh, okay.
And also before that, it's like New Order came from the ashes of what's the name of the band before it? Joy Division. It's basically a Joy Division biopic and then New Order biopic as seen through the eyes of this one guy who was responsible for kind of forming them.
If you've ever seen I don't think you have seen Good Vibrations, which is not a Beach Boys thing. It's the Irish punk movie.
It's about Marky Mark.
No, it's not about Marky Mark. But that's very similar. I actually haven't seen 24-Hour Party People yet, but it's on my to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
Good Vibrations.
Yeah, 24-Hour Party People.
Sensation.
If you're looking for an unusual biopic, check that out. But what I will say is that even though Bohemian Rhapsody does tread that territory, there's enough good in it from the performances and from the way the music is performed on stage and shot that it is, it serves very well as a summary of Queen and what made Queen great.
I think, the music is really the strongest factor, I think. Mm-hmm. Anytime the music's playing, it's like the movie's on and it's firing on all cylinders. I'll let you talk about Mike Myers first, because I want to tell Hawk and Bill the thing that happens.
There's a Saturday Night Live sketch that appears in the middle of this movie for no reason. And that's embodied.
Rich Evans has a cameo in this movie.
Yes, Mr. Plinkett shows up in this movie. So Mike Myers plays, and this is, to be fair, it is a real character. Ray Foster, he was an EMI executive who famously kind of fucked over Queen when it came to the release of their album Night at the Opera. He held off on their... He refused to release Bohemian Rhapsody as a single in Great Britain. It was released as a single in the U.S., but not Great Britain. And as a result, they quit EMI and they moved to another,
label.
And they depict this scene in like a full-on Saturday Night Live style sketch. Mike Myers.
Why do you refer to it that way?
There's comedic relief throughout it. There's all of these moments that pause for laughter. Basically.
Yeah, but the way you're describing it makes it seem like the staging. Like and
not to mention, there's a direct Wayne's World the movie.
Well, that's what I want to get to is the Wayne's World
reference. Go ahead. I'll let you talk about that.
So. They're arguing about what should be the lead single on Queen's album, A Night at the Opera, which is the album that Bohemian Rhapsody is on. And the band really wants Bohemian Rhapsody, but all the executives are like, no, it should be this song, it should be that song, blah, 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 blah. And then Mike Myers has a line that I almost did not catch. So again, like I guess Ken and Will Ashton, who also complained about this reference, are sharper than I am because I almost didn't catch. Like my brain had to do a double take. He says, the single should be a song that kids can drive around in their cars and bang their head to. That song is not Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah,
I have literally driven around and banged my head to Bohemian Rhapsody in high school.
That's what the joke is. Wayne's World. You get the joke, right?
Yeah, I get the joke.
Okay. Yeah, and just the fact that Mike Myers was the one saying it, like it to me, I don't know if I like that reference or not. I guess the majority of people don't, and
it's kind of a late reference.
It takes you out of the relative realism of the rest of the movie.
Well, doesn't the fact that it's Mike Myers looking like Kenny Powers take you out of the reality of the movie?
People have compared him to Kenny Powers. I think people, since whoever the fuck came up with the Rich Evans thing, I can't get that out of my head now.
Oh yeah, he totally looks like Rich Evans as Mr. Plinkett, as they call it, fake Plinkett.
Oh yeah, fake Plinkett. Yeah,
right. He absolutely does.
Yeah. So we'll move on from here. I think we're done with Bohemian Rhapsody.
Well, yeah, we've said everything there is to be said. See the movie; it is worth watching. It's just not as good as it probably could have been or should have been.
What I'll say is, if you're a fan of Rami Malek, definitely see this movie as soon as you can. If you just are a fan of Queen, maybe wait for it to come to rental. But
that depends on how big of a fan of Queen you are, because
that's true.
For me, I know the music. I didn't really know a lot about their lives, so I feel like I did learn some things watching this movie. Like I didn't know that MTV had banned them until Live Aid.
Right. That video, and that video of
I Want to Break Free.
I Want to Break Free, where it's all in drag.
Mm-hmm.
That's what got it banned, which is odd because it's such a innocuous video. It's just, whatever.
I mean, people were showing Monty Python on television at that time. So
if you've ever seen like Just a Gigolo, David Lee Roth, way worse.
Right. Yeah.
But just because it's a dude dressed in drag, they thought that was, which is ironic because how many metal bands in the 80s basically dressed in drag?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Twisted Sister.
Well, yeah, that's true.
All right, so Hunter Killer.
Hunter Killer. You got to say it like a 90s arcade game.
Hunter Killer.
Hunter Killer. Press
Winners don't do drugs.
Yes, exactly.
Remember that on all the arcade games?
Remember that shit? That Ron Reagan
25 cents.
Like, I think my favorite part about that warning before arcade games was that was in quotes.
Yeah.
Winners don't use drugs. It's like, yeah, sure. Fuck off. Let me play my game.
Everyone that developed this game was on cocaine.
I just hit the ball.
Winners don't use drugs. It's Ron Reagan. Winners don't use drugs.
Yeah, but that appears before a game like Mortal Kombat where you're literally murdering people.
Right. Like, are drugs really the big thing here? Like, is that really where the focus should lie?
Yeah, exactly. All right, so Hunter Killer, and I'm going to have to give accolades to Mark Kermode on BBC 4. I don't know. Anyway, the radio show, I watch Mark Kermode all the time on his reviews because he's very great. He calls this movie Olympus Has Sunken. And it's not far off. However, Hunter Killer is a lot better than both London Has Fallen and Olympus Has Fallen. But it's not great. But it is a great movie to drink to, and I will tell you why. This takes place in modern times. But it's probably like this is not a good time for this movie to come out. It opens with a U.S. Hunter Killer sub that is in Russian waters, and it suddenly just disappears. It goes dark, and the U.S. military, the main character the main two characters in this movie is in terms of the military are, let me pull this up here. One of them is played by Common, which was a really weird piece of casting that doesn't make any sense. and he's like an admiral in the Department of Defense. And then it's who plays the girl? It's shit.
Olivia Munn?
No, I wish. Actually, I don't wish because I don't like Olivia Munn.
Linda Cardellini, it looks like.
Linda Cardellini, thank you.
Okay.
I have no idea why I couldn't place that. Linda Cardellini, and they decide two things. That first of all, they are going to send a second submarine into the waters to investigate this disappearance. And for a reason that I don't actually remember or understand, they go off into the Scottish wilderness and they hunt down an old submarine guy, Joe Glass, played by Gerard Butler. His name is Joe Glass. A really generic action movie name. And
Joe Glass.
The opening, the first time you see Joe Glass, he is longbow hunting in the Scottish Alps. He's hunting an elk. And it should be noted, I saw this in the trivia for IMDb, that longbow hunting is illegal in Scotland, but he's doing it anyway. And he's about to like do it. And he's got the line pulled back, and then he sees a doe and a mother, or a doe. Wait, a doe is the female deer, so a doe and a fawn. And he decides not to kill the elk because, like, oh shit, he's got a family. And that's how you know that he has humanity. And that's the final shred of characterization you get for Joe Glass. And this is 10 minutes into a nearly 2-hour movie.
Can I just interrupt to say, an array is a drop of golden sun?
Mm-hmm.
And me is the name I call myself?
Yes, an array as a drop of golden sun is one that is narrated to be found in the first half of Hunter Killer. It's a boring movie in this first half. The thing is there's no reason why Joe Glass is chosen for this mission, because it's mentioned that he's never actually he's never actually been the commander on a submarine, but he's been in a submarine as part of the crew.
It's like George W. Bush saying, "Hey, we should elect someone to the Supreme Court who's never been a judge."
Yeah, exactly.
like what? The fuck are you talking about? Like,
technically you can. There is nothing
you
in the
can, but should you? Like,
it's a very standard airport novel action movie setup where he is the only man for the job. But I don't know. It's so the first half of this movie, like they're down in there in the submarine and they're talking. And I noticed when I was writing the review for this movie on the site, when I Googled images, is that Gerard Butler hilariously keeps pretty much the exact same facial expression for every scene in the movie. He has this like determined look on his face, like brow furrowed and a grimace. And I think he changes that expression like less than 5 times. He smiles a couple times or whatever, but it's almost the exact same expression the entire film, and it's really funny.
I'm pretty sure that's just a birth defect he was born with.
kind of like those goats that fall down.
Yeah.
It's just a genetic defect for the Butler family.
It's yeah. So anyway, Linda Cardellini's character, who works for the NSA, she also wants to deploy a boots on the ground operation in Russia to investigate whether or not this disappearance of the U.S. sub is like an act of war by Russia or something. So these guys aren't that notable, except that their leader is played by I think it's Toby Stevens, who played the bad guy in Die Another Day, which is one of the worst Bond movies, but also one of the best for the same reasons it's one of the worst. And he's got a big old beard. Now, the only reason that this group of guys is notable is because one of the members of the group, his name is Martinelli, and he fucks up consistently. And in my review for the movie on the site, I kind of likened him to O.J. Simpson's character from The Naked Gun, because it's almost on that level. He has like a ridiculous predisposition to mess up or get hurt. So when you first see this team, they're doing an exercise, and Martinelli does not do the run in the amount of time he should be doing it. Like he doesn't beat the time trial of this run and breach exercise. When they are skydiving into Russia, he hits a tree. When they're hiding from Russian forces, he gets shot in the foot. And like there's a couple other times where he messes up until miraculously he's like a badass in the second half of the movie. But it was really funny just how often Martinelli just doesn't he just like gets hurt or fucks up or something like that. Which was great.
I'm just picturing it in my head, like him falling down and it's like a dummy.
Yeah,
and it's just
I mean, it's nothing like
ADR.
the end of the first Naked Gun where his wheelchair rolls down the steps of the stadium.
Oh, yeah.
Or I think that was the second one, actually.
That was the first one. That was the first one. That kills me every time that happens. He's like, ah!
And, like, doesn't it like hit a rail and he flips
Yes.
out of the wheelchair?
Oh god.
Nothing like to that level, but it feels almost like it feels like a marriage of those two sensibilities where a serious movie but that's one of the biggest problems of Hunter Killer is that it's kind of very silly and also very serious, but it never kind of finds the balance or decides which of those two it wants to be. And for the first half, it's really, really boring. Nothing really happens. There's no characterization. And then they get to a point where they come across another Russian submarine, and instead of having been attacked, it looks like there's explosion marks on the submarine where the breach marks are outward, which means that the submarine was exploded from the inside. And so they rescue 3 members of the crew from that submarine, and one of them is a Russian general played by Michael Nyqvist. I think I pronounced his name right. The late Michael Nyqvist, who played he was in The Swedish Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
Oh, he was also in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol.
Yeah, he was the bad guy in Ghost Protocol.
Yeah.
Great actor. But he is a Russian submarine captain who has a history with Gerard Butler's character, Joe Glass.
And you caused me to have a breakup with my marriage.
No, I think they came across each other in the waters at one point, and one of them was going to open fire on the other, and they didn't. And there you have a little bit of development here where Joe is like, oh, it's you're down here in a submarine, you don't know what it does to a man being in a combustible tin can. And he kind of has some expository dialogue for a while. And then at this point, we flash back to Russia, where the Russian president, who in this movie is very benevolent and looks like, the dad that lives next door, like a nice guy. He's got hair and glasses, and he's like, yeah, man, I just want to be cool.
He's got hair,
He's got hair and glasses.
Yeah. Does he have glasses? I can't remember. Anyway.
No, Putin doesn't have glasses.
Hair and glasses. What is he, cousin it?
Yeah, he's not Vladimir Putin, I think is the point of this movie. He basically, they're also wondering what happened because a Russian sub also went down earlier in the movie, and all he wants to do is talk to America and figure out what happened and find the most peaceful solution so that both countries can carry on being peaceful with each other, like nothing is going on in the real world as we know it. But then his Secretary of Defense, who I can't remember who plays him. It's what is this? Anyway, while I'm touching this, I'll keep talking. He's kind of like, Ken called my bluff by posting the sidekick from The Lord of the Rings, but he's not that bad. But in the same sense of the character, he is kind of like this disheveled, sniveling sidekick who's like, yes, we should go to war. And the president is like, no, we're not going to do that. And he's like, well, it's a coup, motherfucker. And so this guy takes over the Russian government and kidnaps the Russian president.
Oh, God.
And there's this one part where it's a shot from behind him, and he walks out onto a balcony of the president's house or whatever. And he kind of looks out over the land. And it's one of the most egregious moments of green screen I have seen in a long fucking time. It's one of those ones where the bloom is too high, so it kind of creates this really weird CGI wrap around the actor's head.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was asylum level bad in terms of the green screen. So at this point, this movie turns into the American submarine with the Russian submarine captain and the American soldiers on the ground teaming up to save the Russian president from a coup. And that's exactly the point where this movie gets fucking great in a very boozy way, I guess I'll put it. Because the whole first hour of this movie is build up and boredom and just nothing happening. And then the second half is just stacking action scenes like a a fucking Jenga block. And it's like shootouts underwater and like battleships racing in and people looking concerned in boardrooms. And Gary Oldman plays a general and he yells 98% of his lines. We gotta go in and do this. I am Gary Oldman and I yell a lot.
Like The Professional.
Yeah.
Everyone.
Yes. Like, all he does is yell his lines and yell at people and get really angry all the time, and it's really great. And then, so there's a lot of action scenes after this and shootouts and things blowing up, and all of a sudden Martinelli is a badass sniper who, like, all is lost, and he's shooting people. There's a scene where, like, there's a shootout in the Russian president's house boardroom, where the Russian president all of a sudden turns into an action hero while they're rappelling down the side of his house and they're shooting, and then this guy dives in the water and he's like headshotting with his pistol, and another guy kills himself with grenades while giving the middle finger, and it gets completely wild from this point on. And at this point, if you're following the drinking game that I did for the site, you should be sufficiently liquored up by this point, which makes the movie even better, I would think. I didn't drink while I was watching it because I was in the theater and I had to drive home. But I think I put it together in such a way that you should be ready by that point to have a lot of fun. The other really funny thing about this movie is that there is a moment where they have to go through a minefield in Russian waters, and Gerard Butler's character, Joe Glass, is like, we got to trust this Russian general because he knows these waters, and nobody else trusts this guy because he's Russian, and nobody trusts Russians in this world.
Yeah.
And
wait, does anyone trust Russians in this world?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
In this world.
Oh.
In this world and in this world, in the movie world and the real world.
I was gonna say.
Every time that Michael Nyqvist's character says something or makes a decision, he looks dramatically at Gerard Butler, and Gerard Butler dramatically looks back at him. And I think that more time is spent with these two gazing into each other's eyes than time is spent of actual things happening in this movie. Every fucking thing he says, they look at each other, and it's supposed to be really dramatic. There's lots of like crash zooms, and like really, like, this movie is like a made-for-TV action drama.
You're making me think of this Tim and Eric skit where they're in an infomercial for the Terry Green machine, and there's this bit where Eric looks in the other guy's face, not Tim, but there's another guy there,
the black guy.
Like, yeah, he's like, it's the Terry Green machine.
We're having a Terry Green viewing party.
Yeah,
that's it. Yeah,
they're staring into each other's eyes.
They get really close. Yeah,
that makes me laugh every time I see it.
Oh yeah, it's perfect timing. It's not quite like that. I mean, like it's a reverse shot type thing with this, but it's still like every time he like he's like turn left here, and then he like looks up at Gerard Butler, and Gerard Butler's like, ooh. It's really fucking funny.
So I heard one internet critic refer to this movie as the launch of the Brown October.
Ew. What is that?
It's I actually Googled Brown October. It's in the Urban Dictionary under taking a shit. So,
okay.
But I thought that was a creative way of referencing.
So, how many beers are we giving? And let me say this in my Texas Chainsaw Massacre voice: Hunter Killer.
I gave it 4 beers. It's not a good movie. The first half is very boring, but the second half is surprisingly watchable.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing ever gets really all that great, but it gets kind of fun in the second half. And it, again, the way it stacks these action scenes is that I think the movie was over at one point, and with a face-off ended up in a stalemate, and then all of a sudden the Secretary of Defense of the bad guy Russian, he's like, oh, send out the missile trucks, and then it's like zoom 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 zoom, and everybody's like, oh my god, we're going to war. And then there's like a whole nother action scene with like the two countries at a standoff, and then from there it goes to another action scene after that. It's like the movie's been jerking off for the whole movie, and then like the second half, it's like starting to build the climax, and then it's like blah, like in the last half.
Oh god!
Where it's just like tons of action all over the place, and it's
been really 1 week since we got to see a bunch of armies storming a submarine.
Yes.
Chicken in China, the Chinese chicken.
You just have to say that anyway.
Yeah.
And then it kind of ends with this, again, very tone-deaf understanding of international relations in modern times. Now, of course, since Michael Nyqvist died in April 2017, somewhere in 2017, this movie was filmed at least 2 years ago.
That's who is that?
What?
He's an actor.
He was in Mission Impossible. Ghost
okay.
Yeah, he's the Russian general in this movie. So obviously, this movie is a couple years older than now. Like it was sitting on the shelf for at least a year or two.
If you're going to question, he pointed out this information earlier. I might have went to go to the bathroom, to be honest.
Oh,
with
no.
you.
Yeah, so the Russian general that helps them navigate the waters in the submarine is Michael Nyqvist, who died of lung cancer last year, and he was the villain in Ghost Protocol and the protagonist in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo Swedish version.
And how about John Wick? He was the main Russian villain.
Yeah, he's the Russian villain in John Wick, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Well, so I guess there's only one more thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It would be An Evening with Beverly Loughlin.
A magical evening.
Listen, it's 2 words, Loughlin. It's not
Loughlin.
It's not Loughlin.
An Evening with Beverly Loughlin for one magical night only.
Am I the only one that watched this twice?
I watch it twice.
I am never watching this movie again.
Yeah, probably. I'm not. I thought I was going to watch it again, but I decided there were better things to do.
I'm going to let you guys lead, but I do want to point out that I just about an hour before we got here, I rewatched it with people that liked it.
That's
a couple of friends on my Rabbit feed liked the movie, and so it was very surreal watching it and kind of. So I'm kind of in this weird, neutral zone right now. So please.
Looks like that's good.
So here's the thing. I am not particularly going to hate on this movie either. Because here's the thing. I didn't like this movie. I thought that it felt like he was trying too hard to make a quirky, weird movie versus with The Greasy Strangler. It just felt kind of natural to him.
So, so for some context to anybody listening that doesn't know, we were all very big supporters and fans of a film called The Greasy Strangler, which came out in 2016. And that was the very first feature film by Jim Hosking. And this is his
sophomore slump.
Sophomore slump. I was going to, my whole point
feature.
I don't know. There were no major studios involved in the release of The Greasy Strangler. Am I correct?
Correct.
You're right, but this one was a Universal.
This is a Universal Studios picture. There are celebrities in it.
And ironically, this is not going to make near as much money, I would bet.
No, it's
in the long run, no. But I guarantee you, there were probably people that purchased this on Amazon or whatever, not knowing who it was.
Like me, I did.
You knew who Jim Hosking is. I'm talking about people that just see Craig Robinson and Aubrey Plaza are in this movie. I like them. I'll pay for this.
Yeah, Jermaine Clement's in this movie.
Jermaine Clement, yeah.
None of them get anything to do that's interesting, except maybe Craig Robinson, just because he's making some choices in this that are just bizarre.
Because he farts a lot.
I can't speak to what his choices were because
I don't think they were necessarily just his choices. I think it was also Jim Hosking's.
Yeah, most of his dialogue in this movie is grunting.
That was on purpose. That was the intent.
Let me best of the worst style hand one of you the keys to the ship here. Ken, what is the plot of An Evening with Beverly Loughlin?
Okay, so the plot I can summarize super quick. So Aubrey Plaza plays Lulu Danger, and she gets fired by her own husband at a job, and clearly is not very happy with her husband. Her husband is Shane Danger, played by Emil Hirsch,
who is apparently a sex offender. He might choke women or something. I don't know.
Abuser,
like the actual Emil Hirsch.
Yes, yeah, no. He apparently he choked a woman.
Oh shit!
I think so he punched her or something. Like he got into a fight.
I don't know. Either way, he laid his hands on a woman.
Either way, he's kind of a scumbag.
Okay, well, I had no idea, but either way, So anyway, she seizes on an opportunity created by Emil Hirsch. Emil Hirsch robs
her brother.
Her brother.
Who is the Porto guy?
He's the free drinks.
Free drinks.
Yes, and as a result, takes his cash box, and then Jermaine Clement plays a guy who's like a do-gooder for hire or something.
Can I say something?
I think he's supposed to be like a hitman for hire or something.
You know what? I think I've stumbled on a realization today rewatching this.
Yeah.
I believe that role was written for Sky Elabar, the guy that played Brayden in Greasy Strangler.
That would have made the movie much better.
I feel like that role was written for him.
No offense to Clements. But
then, Universal Studios picked up the script and he was like, oh, you got to cast somebody famous in this, the lead role of your film.
Yeah.
When I saw him with the long hair and kind of the weird, awkward disposition, I was like, it kind of just like that. Like I got it. I was like, oh, this role was probably written for Sky Elabar.
And I think that would have probably elevated it if it was.
Mm-hmm. He is in the movie.
He is.
But very, very brief. Like it's a small.
Yeah, he's a minor character.
Yeah.
So anyway, she basically, long story short, she sees that she sees a commercial for an evening with Beverly Loughlin for one magical night only.
One magical night only. I'm glad that you added that caveat.
That is
the movie never fails to add that caveat.
It's occurring at this hotel called the Morehouse Hotel, and so she basically essentially kidnaps Jermaine Clement and forces. Well, yes, she holds him at gunpoint.
She goes on the run with him.
Well, okay, I will point out that this is sort of a funny concept that the movie doesn't like flesh out comedically. He shows up at their house randomly and she pretends to know who he is and then is like tells her husband, "Let him in the house. He's Colin.
He's a party guy." Or something. She says something like that. Like he's a
party
movie,
yeah,
party man.
Yes, she calls him Party Man.
Yeah. So anyway, through this wacky circumstance, he is able to get a hold of the cash box, which she then gets a hold of, and then she gets a hold of his gun, which she then gets a hold of him, which she then forces him to drive her to the Morehouse Hotel, where she lays out her plan, which is to see an evening with Beverly Loughlin.
Which is not really much of a plan.
For one magical night only.
Yeah, yes. Well, she wants to see him, and it's implied that she has some kind of a past history with this guy.
They find photos of the two of them in her underwear drawer after she flees.
Yeah, right. So it's heavily suggested there's something there. There's a mystery as to why she wants to see this guy again, and all this other stuff. Meanwhile, Jermaine Clements, he's slowly gaining an attraction to her. Like he's attracted to her dangerous nature and her beauty and all that stuff.
It's kind of trying to do like a film noir thing where he's like a PI and she's a femme fatale type.
Except he's the one interested in her. She's the one that's totally not interested in him.
Yes.
It's like a reversal kind of thing. And he's like really desperate to get with her. And she's like, that's inappropriate.
We'll come back to this plot element because it does. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Shane Danger is like, fuck, the cash box is gone, and her brother knows it was me, and then fucking.
Well, he's got his employees. One is Sky Elabar, and the other, I don't know the actor's name, but he plays a character named Tyrone. I love that guy, and I love the weird mannerisms he has and shit, and like.
Yeah, Tyrone's great.
Him and Sky Elabar, like there's a part, I forget why he says this, but he says something about there's a penis, and then Tyrone is like, yeah, male penis.
Oh, because she was saying that Aubrey Plaza's character left them because women are attracted to men's with guns. Because
the gun is like a penis. Yeah, that's right.
He says men's with guns. Men's with guns. And it's like, because it's like a penis. the male
that
penis.
stuff. Yeah, that stuff was fine. I mean, they're okay. All right, continue with the plot. Let's.
I think that stuff is fine. I think that stuff was fine because it was by unknown or generally unknown actors.
Mm-hmm.
That's what kind of makes it elevates it a little bit more. But yeah, let's go on with the plot.
I mean, there's not much else to say. Basically,
oh yeah, they just kind of fuck around.
They just kind of hang around this hotel for like a goddamn hour, waiting for something to fucking happen.
Matt Berry is drugging Beverly Loughlin. I almost forgot his name. I almost called him Craig Robinson.
Well, he is Craig Robinson.
He's he's Frankenstein Craig Robinson, because for 90% of this movie he just goes.
And he farts a lot. He gets
farts. Well, that's due to the drugs that Matt Berry is giving him.
He has to fart him by pressing him in the stomach, and then
he burps him like a baby.
Well, he farts him like a baby. Yeah.
Rubs his belly.
Which are absolutely some of the most embarrassing things I've seen.
I agree with you. And it's because it's okay. So we'll continue with the plot, but yes, let's talk about.
There's really not much more of the plot.
There is and there isn't. But
there is and there isn't. The evening with Beverly Loughlin happens. It's like
Irish folk music.
It's like the meeting point for all the characters and all the arcs, and it's Irish or Scottish or whatever folk music. They're singing songs like
"Hey nanny nanny and a ho ho ho."
Yeah, I was a football referee or something like that, and then revelations happen or something. I don't know, but
okay. What was I talking about before this?
Well, let's get into our feelings on the movie.
But as a person who enjoys Irish folk music, the music featured in this was pretty much intentionally the worst possible examples you could give.
I think we were all thinking Beverly Loughlin was going to be like a magician or something. And
the thing is, there's all this build up to what a magical night would be, and I understand that part of the humor of it is that it's underwhelming. But Jesus, they could have had it be at least something semi-compelling.
Maybe, I'm thinking about it some more now, talking with you guys, and usually this is where a lot of times when movies that I have contention with get a higher rating for me, a slightly higher rating for me, is when I actually get to talk about it with you guys. This might be that case. I think maybe that whole sequence where it leads up to, and then it finally is the magical night. Maybe that's the point. Is it's supposed to be dull as shit.
I'm actually kind of on board with you after that second viewing, and it took that second viewing to really.
I'm not on board.
Now, of course,
I'm not on board with saying the movie's supposed to be dull as shit, so that's what makes it awesome.
No.
It can be dull as shit and dull as shit at the same time, intentionally, and that's the reaction you have. And that doesn't justify the filmmaker going out of his way to give you a horrible time. But maybe that's some insight into what he was going after. Maybe there's something there that is funny to some degree. I think I'm going to have to rewatch this now. I wasn't too convinced on rewatching it before. I gave this movie a fucking 1 star on Letterboxd.
Really?
Out of 5, yeah. This is the lowest rating.
Me and you, for those who don't know, Bill and I watched it together over Rabbit, and
we just absolutely had a horrible time watching it.
We did not enjoy it.
We did not enjoy it. It was like pulling hair out. It was just.
I don't know if I enjoyed the second viewing so much as more like having people there that appreciated what we were watching. Kind of made me kind of like, okay, there are people out there that watch this. It's not miserable for everybody.
Now, I gave it a shot based solely off of The Greasy Strangler. I was like, dude, this is the next movie from Jim Hoskins. It's gotta be good, right? It's gotta be fantastic. And of course it maintains that crazy linguistic dissonance between characters where everyone's speaking really weird and behaving really weird. One person's got one tone, another person's got another tone, and so on and so forth, and everyone's kind of overdoing it theatrically, in a way.
And I would say it works in fits and starts in this case. Whereas The Greasy Strangler was consistently.
The Greasy Strangler is consistent.
This movie is heavily inconsistent with that regard. But
there are scenes where
characters.
There are scenes where people just have coughing fits, and he just lingers on that shot. Like he'll just film them having coughing fits.
For example, the guy who was like in the Greasy Strangler, he was the character that owned the car wash. He plays a woman.
He plays a woman in this,
and then he starts coughing like crazy. And I swear it must have been a full fucking minute.
It was. Yeah.
It's nothing but him. I mean, I'm probably exaggerating, but it was nothing.
I think I joked a few times. I was like, "Cut."
Right. It must have been like 30 seconds or 45, but it felt like a fucking minute. Mm-hmm. And he just kept going, and it was so awkward and uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And I was like, it's cool to make a movie that makes the audience feel something, whether it's being uncomfortable or whether it's being not uncomfortable, but totally content or whatever. But that doesn't ignore the fact that you're making that's the reaction, is that they're uncomfortable and feeling awkward. You don't always go to a movie or for a night out with Beverly Loughlin to get the Andy Kaufman routine. But at the same time, the Andy Kaufman routine is still brilliant. So it's like, I have a hard time with this movie. I'm kind of like, I don't know if it
doesn't work as well as it did the first time around with Greasy Strangler. And I think the difference is Greasy Strangler, it felt fresh, and in this case, the same formula feels less fresh.
I don't think this was the same formula. I think this was the same formula upped by like 100%, like double. I think they were trying way too hard. It was almost like desperation at times. Desperation to repeat the success and not success. I don't know how well the Greasy Strangler did box office wise, but to repeat the style.
I will say something that also helps the Greasy Strangler a lot is the soundtrack, and the music in this isn't bad.
The soundtrack is by the same guy, and
it's by the same guy. He does a good job. Yeah,
the soundtrack is great, but it's out of place at times.
Yeah, the thing with Greasy Strangler is the music was always out of place, and it was out of place in a really weird way,
in a really good way too.
Yeah, and.
That disco bit where he's just dancing in the street lights.
Oh, I like that. The Greasy Strangler. Yeah. All right. So I do want to give Hawk the floor because I think he's sort of a detractor. And again, I'm sort of in the middle. So
he's not a detractor. He's a detractor from our point of view.
Right.
Like, so far, we've been talking negatively a little bit or a lot of it. He's got the positive end of it.
Yeah, by all means, Hawk, go ahead. Jump in.
All the means.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
Okay.
I gave it 4 stars.
Broadcast like right there.
4 out of 5.
I'm not.
Yeah, 4 out of 5. That's the.
Okay.
Yep.
It's out of 5.
In fact, I did 4.5, and then I brought it down to 4 because I really thought this movie nailed it. Now it's not as good as Greasy Strangler. Greasy Strangler was my number 3 movie of the year it came out. I think it was number 3. What?
Yeah, it was your number 1, Bill, right?
Yes.
Is that what you said? Yeah.
Yeah, it was my number 3. I think The Little Prince was 2 and Swiss Army Man was number 1.
Right.
But Swiss Army Man really dialed into the weird and the grotesque in a great way. And I think, and I don't want to sound condescending, but I think a part of what some people that don't like Beverly Loughlin is making them not like about it is that it does not have the grossness of the Greasy Strangler. Like, the Greasy Strangler is a nasty movie, and
I actually don't find it that gross personally. I'm sorry to cut you off.
Well, I mean, it's not that, it's not like repulsive, but like he strangles people to their eyeballs pop out, and then he eats the eyeballs.
I will say, as far as my perspective goes, and sort of why I think I'm warming up to Beverly Loughlin a little more, is because right after that movie was over, I showed The Greasy Strangler to my rabbit room, and I remember saying the only thing that truly grosses me out in The Greasy Strangler is when he takes off Oinker's nose and dips his finger in the
nose hole, yeah.
In the hole.
That's like the only thing that really greases. Like the stuff with the grease and stuff, I'm fine with. But I completely understand. Yeah, there's probably a lot of people out there that would be disgusted by that.
So I think that the way the movie kind of strips away the gross, the grimy part of it is part of what Jim Hosking does. Is that Jim Hosking? He kind of, in his 2 features so far, and in some of his commercials that he does now. Jim Hosking has made a lot of commercials, and if you go to his website, jimhosking.com, I think is what it's called, he has a link to all of the commercials he's done. And
he's made a lot of short films, too.
Short films, commercials, he's a wacky dude. In his feature films, he kind of strips away a lot of what I like to refer to as the Hollywood sheen that mainstream films like to give to characters that are dirty. So in The Greasy Strangler, you have, this guy lives with his dad, and, in these movies, in normal movies, you would see this kind of grossness of the relationship as kind of like a byproduct of these hot Hollywood actors playing these roles. In An Evening Beverly Left Lynn, these are all characters who are very, very depressed, very unhappy with their situation, and incredibly socially inept. And again, in a normal Hollywood film, a lot of what you see in this movie would not be present, because you have glamorous people that have a little bit of a social quirk, but they're mostly functional. What I really liked about Beverly Left Lynn is that this movie shows these people completely stripped of that armor that Hollywood might give them. Last night I suggested to Ken that there might be one character in this movie that is happy with his life situation, and that is the concierge at the hotel. Every other character in this movie is in some way very unhappy with where they are at.
Okay.
And I really respected the way that he kind of shows troubled people in these situations just kind of reacting to life, or possibly kind of settling into what life has given them. And they're all very bizarre and crazy and unhappy and weird. And I think that was a really, really good decision in how he characterized these people. Mm-hmm. I also liked how at the very end of the movie, it kind of comes around into what I thought was a very genuinely touching revelation of how Lulu knows Beverly Left Lynn. And I thought that was one of the best scenes of the movie, is when they're talking, and then when Left Lynn says, "Do you ever know what it feels like to not truly belong?" And Jermaine Clement's character said, "Yeah, I do." And that to me was a really important moment of this is a movie, a lot of characters that don't know where they are in life, they don't really understand where they are, they don't like it, and they don't feel like they belong with anybody else, but they're just kind of figuring out where they are as they go along with it. Because everything in this movie, the characters, what they do is very, very reactive. Everything is reactive in the movie. Did you guys notice that when you watched it?
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that, but yeah, I'm noticing it now.
It's what?
He's noticing it now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really, really cool. I also thought that
I felt reaching too hard for subtext.
You what?
I don't necessarily think he's reaching too hard for subtext. I think,
No, I'm not saying he is. I'm saying I think the movie was reaching too hard to have some meaning to it. The Greasy Strangler, oddly enough, when all is said and done and boiled down, it's like about it's about a father and a son relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating how all of that noise that the movie has outside of it is really masking what is essentially kind of a story about father-son bonding.
Well, yeah, and especially that last scene where they sit on the beach together and have a heart-to-heart.
Yeah, I just find it fascinating that that it does that. This movie, I didn't get that same basic human trait, that basic human. I mean, it felt like they were trying hard to tie something in like that at the end, as opposed to it ultimately all matching up.
I would say there was maybe one scene, and it was after the climax, where they kind of were going for what you're talking about, like the beach scene in Greasy Strangler. That was the dance sequence where they're at the bar, everything's that has happened in the movie has happened. The evening is over, and Jeremy Clements is drinking his wacky candy bar drink, and
Rum and Ramble.
Yeah,
Rum and Ramble.
and Aubrey Plaza comes up to him and she's like, you want to dance or something? And she starts dancing by herself and everything. And then he joins in, and it's like two weird people and the rest of the room is just sitting. And it's like these two people are alone with themselves, and they're kind of trying to make the best of it. You know what I mean? It's exactly what Hawk was saying a second ago. And that's probably the moment for me where the movie did kind of try to go for something. If I recognize anything in the movie like that, it would be that.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm so still on the fence about this thing.
Yeah, like Bill, I'll message you. I'll message you privately, Bill, about some of the things that I read into the movie. But I watched it again with that same realization. Like I watched the movie and I enjoyed it, and I kind of saw some of these things, and then I thought about it for a while, and then I rewatched it and looked for some other clues in how these people act. And I think there's kind of an understated, I don't want to say genius, but there's an understated calculation to how Jim Hosking is making this movie. And I don't think it was reaching. I think that he really is going for something with this. You know, one of my reactions was that the Greasy Strangler is like Jim Hosking trying to do John Waters, and Beverly Luff Linn is like Hosking as if David Lynch made a Coen Brothers movie. Because it's got this kind of crime element, but it's also kind of weird. It's like a Twin Peaks.
It's his Bottle Rocket.
I would say it's more like rabbits.
Okay.
Rabbits.
You know, a lot of that. But like it's kind of weird, and you know, but it also there is this kind of undercurrent of I shouldn't say undercurrent. There is a tsunami of absurdism in the movie as well. I think one of my favorite moments in the movie is when Emile Hirsch's character is talking to Tyrone. He's like, "We've got to go to the hotel immediately and find out what's going on." And Tyrone's like, "Yes, we have to go immediately." And they touch their heads and like immediately back and forth, and the camera like ominously pans out as they just say immediately back and forth. And Emile Hirsch was probably one of my favorite elements of the movie because he is so weird. He is like a 90s Nick Cage in his performance, crossed with like Jack Black.
Oh,
okay. I mean, he was definitely.
I'm not buying.
I tried to forget about him because I heard about how he choked a woman.
I'm sorry. I don't buy it.
I heard about how he choked a woman, so I just kind of try to ignore him in the movie.
Yeah, I didn't know about that until yesterday. So I'm just speaking on how I initially reacted to the movie. But
all my troubles seem so far away.
But his performance I thought was really fun.
I thought the guy who played Braden in Greasy Strangler, he was much thinner, almost unhealthy thin.
Oh, he's lost a ton of weight. Yeah,
he was in the Super Bowl commercial with the Pringles and Bill Hader.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's also in the Geico commercial where the supervillain is showing the hero his master plan.
Okay.
Like for a second, he's rolling up the projector, but Sky Elabar is his name.
Yes,
but I think he's really funny.
Yeah,
he's actually good for Jim Hosking movies.
Yes, he's great. I think he's going to be a Jim Hosking.
He has a wonderful. In fact, what's his name? Emile Hirsch, right? He's like, I'll be back in 25 minutes. I have to take a shit. And Sky Elabar is like, who shits for 25 minutes? That actually made me laugh really hard the second time I saw this.
I can't say that I've never had an experience like that.
You've had to shit for 25 minutes?
I think what it was he specifically said 25 minutes. Mm-hmm. Normally when you go to the bathroom, you're not thinking you're going to be there for that long.
I think my favorite part about that joke is how Emile Hirsch delivered it, because he's like, I save a lot and I am positive all the time. Watch the store. I got to go shit. He's like, I got to go shit. Watch the store for 25 minutes. Like he transitions right into that line.
I'm really unclear about how I feel about this movie, and it is I kind of see both arguments. I see both sides of it. Like there is stuff that I noticed more the second time viewing it, but there is also stuff that at the same time, the second time viewing it, I was still I felt the same as I did the first time watching it, where I was just like, get on with it, stop fucking coughing. Like, you're being weird for the sake of weird. Cut it the fuck out.
Did you notice that Jermaine Clement was reading a magazine called Horse Fun?
Did you guys notice? I didn't notice this until my second time viewing. Anytime somebody's eating potato chips in this, they are paprika ridge chips.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like a running theme for Hoskins.
They are the same. They are his Apple cigarettes.
Which is great. Yeah, like I love that there's a Jim Hoskins cinematic universe now.
There is, yeah, those are his fucking Apple cigarettes now, is the paprika ridge chips. I guess is that it?
I guess.
I wish we had more of like a. I feel like everybody's divided on this movie now.
I don't think have we ever had a division like this before?
I don't know.
It's an interesting division. I've said some nice things about the movie, or at least nice things in terms of.
I think, well, honestly,
gathering more of an understanding of where other people are coming from.
When Bill and I first watched this together, we hated it. I think I had said a few times, I was like, I hate this.
Yeah, me too. I said something like that too. And
Bill, you told me it was terrible and it might be the worst movie you've seen this year.
Oh my goodness!
Thus far this year, I can't think of any other movie that I would rate that low. And I rate movies high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I tend to go high on movies, and this movie wasn't as bad as 9/11, the movie.
Wow.
That
9/11, the movie.
What is as bad as 9/11?
That was like half a star, and that's still listed. That's still my most popular rating review on Letterboxd. That's got like 20 something likes already. That's like it's always going to be on my page. I can't get it off, and so but this movie's like a notch above that. And at first, initially, anyways, I'm gonna have to watch it again probably tonight, and because I want it fresh in my mind, and maybe it'll get a little bit of a higher rating. I don't know. I think I'm gonna actually peruse it some more and kind of sift through the rubble.
I'll send you guys my Letterboxd review and post some additional thoughts that I had.
Okay,
but I appreciate. I don't want to say that the movie was, amazing, but I just really appreciated what it was, and I thought it was very funny, and I kind of really somehow I dialed directly into this movie's frequency of weirdness. Mm-hmm. Not quite on the level of The Greasy Strangler, but it really kind of clicked almost immediately with me with how, from the first shot where the camera pans to the left and Shane Danger is shuffling in front of the counter. And I was like, "Yep, I'm on board right now."
That was a funny little movement.
It's like, why is Shane Danger being so intense, being the owner of a coffee franchise house?
Yeah, like a mid-century coffee house.
Right.
He's almost no customers.
He's like so intense, like grinding his teeth, being his shoulders are above his head. It's just it's like, dude, just take a breather. Calm down.
Stop choking women.
Yeah,
really. Like this movie stacks characterization in really interesting ways. I appreciated the humor where, he's like, "Lulu, step into my office," and that she's about to get fired. And then the next shot, they're speaking to each other over a spaghetti and meatball dinner.
Well, there's one big meatball.
Yeah, that's why I said
on each plate.
Spaghetti meatball dinner, not meatballs.
And she puts a cigarette out in the big meatball, which made me laugh the second time because I didn't notice that there was one giant meatball on the plate.
And I think that's another reason that this movie kind of benefits from like at least a second viewing is because there is a lot of really
there's stuff you miss. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff you miss the first time.
Yeah, it's like there's some texture to the visual humor and the humor in the production design and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ken's rolling his eyes right now.
I just don't get it.
And that's fine. That's okay. Like this is not a movie that's for everyone. And again, like I said, I dialed into this movie's weirdness right away, and I might be one of the only ones that was directly tuned into it, and that's just the way that I read it. And that's kind of why I read the different characters that way. and not everybody might do that, but that's what's great about movies and talking about movies is that we all see it in different ways and see different things about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, if we're wrapped up on Luff Lynn, I do want to just add one more thing about Bohemian Rhapsody.
Okay.
Which is that I'm really glad that we didn't have to sit through that scene. And you know the scene I'm talking about, the scene where they record Under Pressure with David Bowie, and David Bowie is played by some fucking high-profile actor, and we all cringe. And oh, thank God they cut, like, maybe they filmed it, I don't know, but that scene is not in the movie. And
I thought you were going to see the scene where he's on his deathbed or something horrible.
know.
So we all know that. We all know that Tilda Swinton should play David Bowie in an eventual film, but if not her, what would be like a worst case scenario?
Worst case scenario.
Jermaine
Clement.
Now I know you're saying that's the thing. I have another good option.
Eddie Redmayne?
Michael Sheen. Remember Tron Legacy?
Oh yeah, that he'd be good. But I think
he did a great techno Bowie.
I think Eddie Redmayne would be like a really bad version of
Bowie living in a computer world.
Eddie Redmayne, God damn.
For your consideration, Eddie Redmayne is best supporting actor in Bohemian Rhapsody.
Okay, so David Bowie, like, what would be the worst possible casting that would also be semi
believable?
Like they would pick somebody who looks like David Bowie and consider nothing else.
You're not gonna say Tom Arnold or something.
Yeah, I was originally going to say Jack Black, but
that's what I'm saying though. Like it has to be somebody that you would theoretically
that could
believe
do it,
but would be hired for this
yes,
job.
That makes sense from a studio perspective.
Yes,
and that's
Benedict Cumberbatch.
No. I've never heard the man sing, but he might not. He's a
good actor,
job.
but he I don't think he would do a good David Bowie.
Yeah, I imagine that Benedict Cumberbatch is not a good singer.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think.
I'm just looking around my room to see if I can find something that will inspire me.
Eddie Redmayne's a good choice, honestly.
Christian Bale? I don't know.
Chris Hemsworth?
Eddie Redmayne might be like the be-all, end-all answer to that question.
Eddie Redmayne is is probably the safe studio choice that everybody would hate.
He played Stephen Hawking. He played fucking Newt Charmander. He can play anybody. Put him.
It would be the safe studio choice that nonetheless would get an Oscar for it.
That's what I call him. That's like my joke is calling him Newt Charmander.
Newt Charmander.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's possible to be more milquetoast than Eddie Redmayne.
Isn't that such a shame? I actually think he's a good actor, but he just chooses movies that are like Oscar bait, and it's just default level.
Hello, I'm David Bowie.
Yes.
To date, his best performance was Jupiter Ascending.
Yeah.
Well, okay, come on now.
I create life.
Yes. Did you see him in The Yellow Handkerchief?
Yeah.
The remake of The Yellow Handkerchief that was in
there's another Yellow Handkerchief.
Yeah, wait, what?
Yeah, it was originally a foreign film. I've
never heard of it.
Oh yeah, it was like a German movie, right?
Yeah, and then it was made in America, set in Louisiana.
Yeah, and it was Kristen Stewart and Eddie Redmayne, right?
And who was the other guy?
Julianne Moore.
Not Julianne Moore, but it was
William Hurt. I just looked.
William Hurt, yes. And, a lot of people actually like that movie.
I kind of saw that movie in this movie has the title that features a color and an object. I'm going to watch it.
Yeah,
The Red Balloon.
Yes, I had a phase. I had a phase of those movies, and I worked at a video rental store where I could just rent movies for free, and I did, and it was fine.
The Thin Blue Line.
Yes,
Thin Blue Line's a good movie.
Yeah,
Errol Morris documentary.
The Thin Red Line. Ooh, that's
not only that, but it's a documentary that got a guy freed from death row. I think that's pretty awesome.
That's pretty great. Yeah.
And
what documentary will elevate past that?
I mean, it's hard to.
Oh God! I mean, that's a real world problem, though. That documentary.
I mean, I guess maybe Claude Lanzmann for making the ultimate statement on documenting the Holocaust.
Oh, Showa? Or...
Yeah, I mean, and his other subsequent films he did, because he basically spent his entire life doing that.
Well, that's a worthy cause to document
absolutely.
such a horrible thing, but and to
I would say
express it. Yeah.
I would say that might be the one example of a film that supersedes a movie that managed to prove someone innocent of murder.
What about the act of killing?
That too, painting
where they showed these dictators and these fascists the horrors
for the
that they
hypocrites
did,
that they are,
and they actually acknowledged it.
Yeah,
and it almost changed some people in a way,
and
possibly.
At the very least, it pointed out their contradictions to them,
to their face.
Yeah, that's true. Of course, then at this point, saying one is more morally great than the other is an exercise in futility.
Yeah,
I would say that they're all the highest level of documentary.
All right.
So